Hey, how are you doing? Welcome to another Money Conversations with Mars. My name is Marshall Weeks, also known as Coach Money Mars, here with you on Monday. So, what are we going to get into today? Today, I wanted to share some things about myself. I think it's very important for you to know who you're talking to. I did introduce myself on the first night we did the money conversations. However, it's always good to refresh memories, especially for those who are new to the group, or maybe you didn't catch it, the live or the replay. So I wanted to reintroduce myself to you just so you understand why I think money is so important. The money conversations, the financial literacy, the being aware, not being aware to the point where you're worrying, not that way, but knowledgeable of. So my story pretty much starts in Virginia. I'm the oldest of four girls. My parents, we started out in Petersburg, Virginia. I was an infant, so I don't recall any of that. Then we moved to Fredericksburg, Virginia. So Fredericksburg, Virginia is, goodness, anything about the history of the United States, colonization and Revolutionary War, Civil War, like all of that. George Washington's mother's buried there. There's a college named after her. So you're talking about a big, historic town, like really historic. We are not too far from Alexandria, Arlington, DC. We are one of the suburbs of DC. My mother, in the beginning, she worked at the Pentagon, and I never worked at the Pentagon. I've never been inside of the Pentagon now that I think about it, which is odd because I've worked in and around government for as long as I can remember. I have been attached to government, never federal, so never had like the GS grade or pay grade is really what it is, but always a contractor or working for a company who was a federal contractor. And that's pretty much all I've known, really. Even the private companies I may have worked for, they all were affiliated with government in some form or some fashion. So I'm used to that world. Everyone in the DMV, as we call it, DC, Maryland, Virginia, I think in growing up at the time, my mom was a teacher. Dad was a car salesman. He had a nice come up story. He started working in the factory overnight, went back to school, got his GED, went and got his license to sell cars, and he was very successful. Like he really took our family into another income bracket. And so, that was us, growing up, working middle class, or I wouldn't even call us, I guess, yeah, the working class today is different. We would have been considered to be middle class then. What we were then, I guess they would have called that working class. Now I would have to go back and familiarize myself with those categories. However, all the bills were paid, all was well. When I look back at my childhood, I'm like, I had a pretty good childhood. I didn't dance like my daughter or do karate like she and my son. I played basketball, softball. I was in the Girl Scouts. I volunteered at church organizations, in my community. I feel like we grew up around Black excellence. I knew Black attorneys and insurance agents and loads of teachers and principals in this predominantly white town, but we had our community, growing up around the AKAs and the Deltas and the Alphas and the Omegas. Didn't have a lot of Kappas. I don't remember a lot of them at our church, but we had this church of Black professionals, people who worked every day. And that was normal to me. It was just normal. Yeah, it's amazing how normal that was. And, we would grow up, to attend schools in the same county where my mother taught. Now she taught at a different high school. So I never attended a school where my mom taught at, but everyone knew that I was Eleanor Bowler's daughter. So I didn't get away with much. It wasn't even worth the try. And being that she was a high school teacher, she knew things because kids would tell her things. I think my mom was a stern teacher, but she was the teacher that everyone liked. So, growing up, it wasn't uncommon for a student to stop by or come over or something like that. So she was stern, but she is who the students liked, who they trusted. And I think that's kind of cool looking back. So, fast forward to 1991, my dad died in a car accident. Super Bowl night. Of course, no one expects a car accident. I was actually the last person to talk to him. He took me, I remember it as if it were yesterday. He took me to a friend's house. She went to a different school than me. And remember used jeans and Nike Cortezes. I'm aging myself, but we swapped out jeans, right? We didn't go to the same school, so why not, right? So we swapped out jeans, and I believe we swapped out sneakers. And he brought me back home, and then he asked me to go with him. He wanted to go get razors to shave, for work, and he never came back. Isn't it? And we had this amazing conversation on the way back from my friend's house, and he went back out and never came back. And I remember speaking with him, standing at the door, and he asked, you want to come with me? And I was like, well, no, I think I'm going to stay here. My stomach just felt awful. It's like I knew something was wrong, but couldn't, I could not verbalize it then, and it was really, really weird, but it's almost like something was just like telling me, do not go. You stay here. And I didn't go. And so, we would find out that night that he died in a car accident. I believe I was 13. I would have turned 14 that year in August. And yeah, that was the story on that. And my mom was a teacher. Like I said, life was good. They had purchased this nice home we lived in October the prior year. He only lived in the house with us for maybe 4 or 5 months. I mean, like I said, everything was everything. Life was great, not a want in the world. Now, we were not like the Cosbys money wise, right? But we had that life, family dinner, family time, no phone during dinner. I mean, we grew up, went to church on Sundays, Bible studies on Wednesdays, voluntold to read responsive reading in church on Sundays, voluntold. I think my sisters ushered, I sung in the choir, me and my middle sisters sung in the choir. So, again, and from my perception, we were a regular old family. Dad dies in a car accident. I find out I'm the oldest. And I've always been like an old soul. So, found out that my dad only had insurance on his job. And didn't really understand at the time how that was awful. You should never be in that position. But what I remember my mom saying is that she scheduled the appointment for him to sign his copy, the policy separate from the job. And she had signed hers, but I believe he had to get back to a client, or he had made an appointment with a client or something like that. Whatever it is, the process was initiated, but he'd never made it back to sign his name on the line. And had he done that, my mom would have been able to pay off the house. It was 4 girls, 4 of us. Like I said, I'm the oldest of 4. And so can you imagine that to be rough? Your husband dies, nobody ever makes a reservation for death, it's not like someone said, hey, you have 6 months, you have a year to get your affairs in order. It was done when it was done. And I just remember, we had a funeral in Fredericksburg. My dad was a very, his personality was amazing. So people liked him, he liked to laugh. He was a good time. It was standing room at his funeral. And then we took his body, 2 hours or so south, or what is that? Southeast? I don't know, southwest, not completely south, but you get where I'm saying, to where he grew up, because that's where he wanted to be buried. And we had another service. The pastor and his wife of our church in Fredericksburg at the time, they came down. Like I said, we were this community, very supportive of one another, normal to me. They drove down, and the pastor's wife, she sung in the choir. And I remember her sitting in my grandmother's church in the choir. She's gone on now. She and her husband, the Cunninghams, have passed on. They were married a long time too. I remember going to their anniversary dinner in South Carolina because he was former military, and he also was my substitute in Spanish. He spoke several languages. So again, Black excellence has never been odd to me. What's odd is what people call Black excellence now, and I don't want to get on that. But typically, when we see celebrities and things, which I think the status is Black excellence, but I just need to say here today that Black excellence is more than athletes and rappers, okay? Like, that really gets under my skin. Black excellence is more than that. I came from Black excellence. I grew up around Black excellence, and I just really need us to, and not us in here, a Women Empowered, but I feel like there is this group beyond that thinks that Black excellence is only throwing money up in the air, and Black excellence is only like red bottoms and it's consumerism. It is so much more than that. And I'm gonna leave that. I'm gonna put a pin in that, and I'll come back to that on another day. But I grew up around Black excellence, hardworking Black families, educated. Some may have been educated as far as college, and then you have some educated, meaning they were self-employed. They had businesses. My godfather, my dad's first cousin, had a construction business. He built his own house with his hands, a Black man. And that he's gone on last year. He passed away. However, his street, nothing but Black families. And these aren't like little shotgun houses. These were very nice homes, And so again, normal to me. And they weren't rappers. They were not athletes. They were not, I don't even think anyone in there was an attorney. We had the first Black female police officer who lived there. We had teachers. We had photographers. Another family at the end, Mr. Newell had his own construction company. So you following me and where I'm going? Like, we had a musician, who taught high school band, like one of my friend's dads. So, that again, like I say, that was normal, right? That was normal. And, buried my dad. Let me fast forward. Buried my dad. And, you go back to normal, you go back home, and eventually the money runs out when you only have insurance on the job, because what we don't know will hurt us. And what people don't realize is that there are clauses in that insurance certificate on the job because the owner is the employer. So there are different clauses in the certificate, and they don't ever let us read the policy. So I would suggest to someone who can hear me to go to work tomorrow and say, may I read the policy? Because we only have certificates as employees. And so depending on what your clause reads, you may or may not, your family may or may not get money if you pass away, because there are ridiculous clauses such as if you don't die on a certain day, or, if it's a car accident, you're not covered. They have a laundry list of things. Fortunately, my dad's paid out, but it paid for the funeral, not even a headstone. Okay. So being that my mom was a teacher, she was tenured. She made good money for the number of years that she had in, However, she had 4 girls, 4 daughters. I was 13. Then there were, my other sister would have been 9. And then the twins were 8. So it was us and my mom and her teacher's salary. And so in the summertime, she worked like a part-time job. We did have, we would either go stay at my grandmother's, who lived out of town. She didn't live local to us, or, my mom would take us with her because she always would do something in education. So, she could keep us busy, or, have us be watched by a friend of the family or something like this while she did that, just to bring in extra income to cover. We were a two-income household. And like I said, my dad was a very successful car salesman. They did have savings and things like that. However, that money runs out when it's a one-income household overnight. And so, like, I remember as I was going off to college, how bad I felt for leaving. I'm the oldest, and it was rough because I pretty much went through undergrad with that in the back of my head, feeling guilty for leaving the family. But I just need someone to know that it is important that we allow people to leave so they can make a difference, because then they can come back and pull somebody with them. But when everybody stays in the stink, you just gonna keep begot, begot the same thing. And that's tight, but I gotta say it. We gotta let people go, right? You don't make someone feel guilty, because my mom knew that she was grown. She was an adult, and she said, I got this. I need you to go to school so you can take care of yourself. And that's what she did with all four of us. And she said, give me somewhere to go. Give me somewhere to visit. I don't need you here with me, because if you stay here with me, that means I'm gonna have to take care of you. I need you to go. So we went. And I remember when she took me down to school, helped me, put my stuff out. My aunt was there too. My aunt has always been there. We had a family, we had a community, even after my dad died, so that's another nugget. It is so very important for you to find a community. I know that there's church hurt, this, that, and the third, but we get hurt on the job and we still go. A friend hurts us, we still go to the event. We still kind of try to hang around or give a second chance, talk it out. I don't know why we don't do that with church. Everybody in church isn't bad. All pastors don't want your money. Just like I tell people, again, affiliated with government, I tell people, you don't make enough money for the government to care about you. You just don't. It's tight, but it's right. They're not listening to everybody. No, because we really are not that important in the grand scheme of things. So, we're afraid to do certain things, get involved in certain things, because we think, and I just tell people, in the grand scheme, you really have to ask yourself, what about myself would get the government's attention, right? Not belittling me or anyone else, but seriously, like, really, they don't care. They have bigger fish to fry, right? So it's the same thing with church. It's so many people coming in and out of there. You got to find your group within the group, right? You have to go in knowing that, the church is a hospital, is for sick people. And just like big colleges aren't for everyone, big churches aren't for everyone, but it doesn't make them bad. It's just not for you or not for me. So I go where I'm comfortable and I create my group. I have a group within the group. That's important. So, we had the community, we had the group from church, when it was time for everyone to go off to school. And, the people that we work for, like I said, I saw Black excellence, the insurance agent. That was my part-time job in high school. He let me come back on college breaks, and then he called another Black insurance agent down in Virginia Beach, and I worked with him. Connections matter. So we should never shut ourselves off, because I made extra money while I was down in school. So anyway, right? Money Conversations with Mars, let me kind of stay on track. So went on to school. I think if anyone follows me on Facebook, I shared my testimony of how I was suspended from school. I was doing too much too fast. In the back of my head, all that stuff going on at home. But everyone made it out. Everyone graduated from school, sometimes a couple times. And same with my mom. She went back to grad school twice, as a matter of fact, before she was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. This was the week of my birthday, August 2008. She went into remission for a year, but then it came back. My mom did get to see me graduate with my grad degree. She was with me at the end of my surgery I had when I was diagnosed with Crohn's. And then I think maybe a year later, I had to get this major surgery. She was just going through the chemo and she finished it. And she came down to be with me, which that was a blessing, because, who doesn't want their mom, right? When they are in in a situation like that. But anyway, fast forward, she did succumb to complications of ovarian cancer the day after her birthday in 2010. But let me tell you, when she passed away, my mom had all sorts of things set up for me and my sisters. I mean, even stuff that will continue to go on for the rest of our lives that we can will to our kids. You got to have insurance outside of the job. I'm going to say it again. You have to have insurance outside of the job. I don't care how great your job is. I don't care how great that title is. If you have not read that policy for yourself, if you don't understand that you only have a certificate and not a policy, you might get a surprise that you don't want if something were to happen, or it's not going to be you. You're going to be gone. It's going to be the people you leave behind. And being that I am a licensed financial coach, and I have my own testimony, and I talk to the clients and I listen to the stories. And, we have people that we know in life, friends and family, who tell the story about when someone passed away and they had to pay for it. That is a feeling I would not want to be in that position. They are so conflicted emotionally. They are sad, upset, guilty because they're upset. It is awful. It's an awful feeling. I have a friend, and it wasn't even her family member. It was the spouse's family member who passed, and it was a lot of them, but she paid for the majority of it because nobody would come out of pocket. Now, I don't know whether they didn't have the money or didn't want to spend it, but it was their relative, but she paid for it. And I remember her saying how she sat at the funeral and she was just in prayer. God, please, help me to focus. And that's like one of the things I say all the time. We all know people, and you may be the person who has all the money, you know what I mean? And I'm one of these people who say, just because someone has the money does not mean they're obligated to spend it on somebody else or obligated to give it. I don't think that's fair. Do you think that's fair? Just because you have it. So let's just say your business is doing really well. You're investing your money. You're saving your money. You're able to put your kids through this, do this for your parents who are seniors. And you're the one that people always come to because they think that the money that you make, that you should pay for others. And they have this entitled deal about themselves, like, you got all that money. You should be the one to cough it up. You should be the one to pay. But yet they never, ever think, well, maybe I ought to go and do some improvements on myself so I can make more, so I can stop going back. Like, we should stop going to this one person and just robbing them of their retirement. Does that make sense to you? Anyway, it is important to have insurance outside of your job, even though you may not be here. And again, I have heard clients, I have had people to sit in front of me and say things like, I am not going to be here. It is not my problem. And I remained professional. However, it just kind of made me sad for that person's family, because it's like, our parents, they pay for our entrance in the world, but we are 100% responsible for our exit. It is not anyone else's job to collect. It is not anyone else's job to do that. Like, it just is not. And it's like, we are grateful for people who, out of the kindness of their heart, because sometimes there are things that have gone wrong, and we understand that every situation is not the same. Everyone is not the same. However, we have to put ourselves in the position and be open to the education. Folks, money, there is no shortage of money in these streets. There is no shortage of money. The reason why a lot of us think that there's a shortage of money is because of the people who are in our ears. We got to change our group. There is no shortage of money. Everybody wasn't doing bad during the pandemic. Everybody wasn't doing bad during the pandemic. You had a lot of people who came up in the pandemic. It is important to understand history. It is important to understand history. When you go back and you look at every major tragedy that has taken place in the United States, millionaires resulted from those tragedies. Millionaires resulted. The Great Depression, the dot-com crash, the real estate, when the real estate market crashed. Just go back. You can even go back further. There are people who come out on top at the end of these tragedies, and we cannot be mad about that. We cannot be mad about the people who pay attention. We cannot be mad about the people who hear from God. He is no respecter of person. And that Bible can be read by anybody who is literate. They don't even have to be believers. That Bible is a very powerful book. It's so powerful. It can be used for bad or it can be used for good. But the principles work. The Bible is a very practical book. That's why as believers, we're supposed to use it in our everyday life because it's so practical. It tells us what to do for everything. Even says, we have a helper that will tell us what to do when we don't know what to do, right? So we have to be open to learning, to hearing, so we can get our affairs in order because things happen, we lose jobs, we get sick, we get depressed. Sometimes our mental health will prevent us from going to work and making the money. But that's why, folks, I'm telling you, we have to budget. We have to invest. We have to put some sort of income protection, also known as life insurance, in place. And we cannot put all of our eggs in the job basket. Another example, I had a client to tell me she was on maternity leave and we wrote her policy. I wrote the policy for her. She was devastated to find out she could have died in labor and the employer was not going to pay out because on maternity leave, your insurance is not active. She couldn't wait to talk to me, and I was happy to help her because that wasn't her first child. She had 3 other babies that her mom was helping her out with, and I don't think her mom worked. So can you imagine if she passed away to leave her mom to fend with 3 babies and then another infant? So how in the world do we establish generational wealth if we keep the family in a crisis all the time? If you don't have life insurance and you don't have investments and you don't have a will and you're not thinking about these things, the children that we are raising right now and we want to put them in college or show them how to run a business or whatever it is that their journey is, right? Whatever their journey is going to be. And they can't do it because they got to pay for your funeral, or their dream that was on track is pushed back 10 years, or the grandbaby, the parents have been working and saving and investing, and then they got to take that money and pay for somebody's funeral in the family. How do you build generational wealth when someone is always having to pick up the slack? We got to love each other to the point where let me do what I'm supposed to do so you can do what I've raised you to do. We got to think about it like that. We got to think about it like that. And, I've sat before people who have said, I don't want anyone getting rich off me. It's amazing because I'll be looking like, well, there was something called the civil rights and people died so we can be free. We are wealthy today in more ways than one. I'm not talking about just money, but we are wealthy today because of what somebody else did. And people died. They got shot. They got hung. So we could walk around here free today talking about the ancestors, and we don't want anyone to get rich off of us. We owe. Yes, we do. So I want us to think about what we saw growing up. Think about the things that impacted us. How I grew up impacted me. I remember being in my early 20s and help getting myself out of debt because I did a lot of dumb stuff in college, trying to be grown too fast. Dumb stuff, dumb things. I should say ignorant because I didn't know any better. Wasn't dumb, it was ignorant. I didn't know any better. I was trying to be grown, trying to be helpful, but I ended up putting myself in a bind. But thank God I was able to get myself out of it. And that's a good memory. And it was from that point in my early 20s that started the love for financial literacy. But you're grown, you get a job, and before you know, you doing something that you really, really like, but is it your passion? That's kind of what happened to me. So over the pandemic, I was still quiet, remembering things, bringing things to my remembrance. I remember when I moved down to Georgia, blogging. I would blog and email, right? This is before like those sites and things like that. I would write up long things and send them out, just whatever was put on my spirit. I didn't know it then. I just thought I was smart. That's how it is when you're in your 20s. You know everything, right? You're just a genius. Anyway, God would drop stuff in my spirit, and I would sit at my computer and just type it up and email it to people. And then look at what I'm doing today, writing things, but now it's like digital. It was digital then, but it's digital in a different way now. So now it comes through graphics and videos and interviewing people and talking to you here on a StreamYard that did not exist back then. You see how things come full circle. God will bring your passions right around. So remember when I asked you the first time, I asked you, what did you want? I said, you really need to sit down and figure out what you want so you can get your money game together. Because if you don't know where you're going, you aren't going to budget because you don't have a direction. I had to learn that and relearn that. That's a whole renewing of the mind every payday, right? We're supposed to renew our mind daily, but with the payday and the budget, that's a every 2 weeks, look, bi-weekly, bi-monthly, monthly renewing of the mind, right? So we went over the budgets before, and I would tell you, do the zero out budget. The other budgets are cute with the percentages and things, but do the zero based. Start at zero or end up at zero. Spend all your money on paper first, and that's your direction, that's your plan, and then make adjustments based on the paycheck, or if something comes up, adjust from there, but have a plan that'll help you. And in the budget, you're going to find some money for life insurance and investments because that's important. It's more important than streaming services. It's more important than concert tickets. It's more important than nails and hair. Like we literally will do nails and hair every 2 weeks. I remember when I did that every 2 weeks, like clockwork, walking through those doors. So we have the money to invest. We just have to figure out what's more important, my future, because investments is your living will. That's what you have when you retire, unless your plan is Social Security. Have you been paying attention to what they're talking about now? People are upset about what's going on with the Social Security, but that plan was in place like 5 years ago. But people are upset now because no one pays attention. I read it. I went and looked it up. That was in place 5 years ago. They're just arguing about it now, but it was in print. It was part of a plan. So, I'm not saying I want people to worry because I don't want us to worry. We shouldn't be worrying. We serve a God. He said he'd fight our battles. We need to be aware, but then we're supposed to cast it aside. Don't hold it. God, I know they said in such and such year, Social Security is going to be gone or whatever, but I know you got a plan for me. But then ask him to help you with the plan. Don't just say you got a plan for me and think he's going to drop your written budget, right? He's not going to do that, but he'll be with you because he's inside of you. He's going to tell you where to put those numbers. He's going to tell you what to do. I've made it a point, like on payday, and when I get, my business income comes in, and I'm like, oh, okay, God, what do I do with this? And sometimes I have to postpone getting my pedicure. Sometimes, just depends. Doesn't mean I'm never going to get it. I might need to wait a week. I don't know. He may say, I need you to give a little bit more this time. Or he may say, okay, I need you to pay that off over there. I'm sick of seeing that. Get rid of it. You have it. Get rid of it. You know, money comes back. I got you. Okay. So I gave you a lot, but I needed you to know that my passion for financial literacy really comes from seeing the different things that went on from the aspect or perception of a child, really, and then growing up with those experiences and then putting things in order. I left out a lot, like, the first time I talked to someone I thought that was older. So when you're in your 20s, 30s is like you're a crypt keeper at 30, right? You're looking at someone who's in their 30s when you're like 23, and it's like, wow, you're a grown up. And they're just as clueless as we are, right? I've been through my 30s, and yeah, I was like, wow, did I really know what I was doing? I think maybe 35 was a good year. 30, I was there, but still, still a lot to learn. And if we're open, doesn't matter whether you're 45 or 55, if we are open, man, just think about the knowledge, that we can gain. And then, we ask God to help us, have wisdom with the knowledge, because, knowledge and wisdom are two different things. I always tell my kids, it's great that you're smart, but let me see what you do with it. I need to see proof. And it isn't that grade on your paper. You can make A's at school, but you can't clean up your room. I'd rather you make C's at school and know how to organize your things, because I know that going through life, those grades, it's great. And we always push excellence, but now how much of that stuff are you using that you learned? So yes, it's great to make good grades. My thing, and I have it written on the chalkboard in the kitchen, why be good when you can be excellent? You're the righteousness of God by faith in Christ Jesus. So why just be good? And it's the same way in our finances. Why be okay when you can be financially free? Why just know a little bit when you can be financially savvy? No one says you have to read the ticker tape and sit in front of the NASDAQ. Nobody said that. No one's gonna, I'm not talking about, oh, what's the Dow Jones of the day? I don't even know that. Yeah, no, we're not talking about that. We're just saying knowing what's going on with your money, putting it on paper. Why be good if you can be great? And that's all I have for you on this Money Conversations with Mars. Thanks for hanging out with me. We're going to talk about the money spectrum next week, and I'm going to fill in some more gaps to my story with money. It's ongoing. However, I want to fill in some more gaps, some things that happened in my life and people I ran across that just changed my mind completely about money. You've been empowered because you should prosper.
Ashamed of trying to make a ways now. Money, 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 money makes the world go round.